He captured music history at Red Rocks and the Ogden. We look at the life of a photographer remembered for his work. The needle and the swab. COVID testing continues as more people get the vaccine. What does it mean today? You are very generous because you helped break a big fundraising record after the shooting in Boulder. It's snowing out, but back in the 1930s, they may have said, it's dirt out. We've got a dusty throwback Thursday. And since it still feels like winter, we examine ski resorts and if they should be obligated to reveal more about injuries on the slopes. Next. More than a year into this pandemic, we are back to talking about testing, but this time as we look at testing numbers and positivity rates, there are a couple of big factors to keep in mind to show just how much things have changed. Our Anusha Roy takes the lead tonight.
As we've seen vaccine rates go up, in some areas we've started to see testing numbers go down.
Today, the state reinforced a message we've long heard. And yes, it still stands as more people are getting their shots.
As people are waiting their turn to get this vaccine, and as some of our restrictions began to relax, it is really important to know that testing can help slow the spread of this virus.
So here's what's going on. The positivity rate has been going up and testing numbers have fluctuated. But to really understand the numbers, you need to factor in vaccines as well.
The CDC guidance around testing for fully vaccinated people changed, which means that even if you have a high risk exposure as a fully vaccinated individual, you don't need to quarantine and you don't need to be tested if you remain asymptomatic. For people who are not vaccinated, the testing requirements and indications are exactly the same and are unchanged. And even if you are vaccinated and you become symptomatic, any symptoms, you need to be tested.
Then there's the expected ebb and flow of testing numbers and the fact that we've been at this for a while.
I think people have just tuned out a little bit.
Plus, this fourth wave is impacting a younger demographic as many older Coloradans are now protected.
Populations that need to be vaccinated are the younger adults. And it may be that while COVID is spreading, this is a population that has higher rates of asymptomatic spread.
And at the end of the day, testing is still so important because doctors are also watching an uptick in hospitalizations. And health experts are again reminding people COVID precautions are still so important.
Testing is one of the absolutely critical pillars of our response.
For Next, I'm Anusha Roy.
When you talk about testing, doctors we talked to said it's become way easier to access a test now, and the turnaround time is better. The state also talked about a free program for eligible frontline workers to get at-home COVID tests. Our daily positivity rate average continues to decline. Yesterday, it was 4.5, down more than 1% from the day before. It keeps our weekly positivity rate average at 5.8. That's still above the 5% threshold that health officials want to see, but we are going in the right direction. More than 23% of our state's population are now fully vaccinated, or nearly 1.4 million people. Nearly 15% of Colorado still needs a second shot. But these numbers could change as thousands of people in El Paso County will have to start the vaccination process over after learning their vaccines were invalid. The bad news, though, is that our hospitalizations continue to rise. 488 people are currently being treated for COVID in hospitals across Colorado. That's up 19 from the day before. These are the highest hospitalization numbers we've seen since mid-February. During a debate on the civics bill, a Colorado lawmaker spent some time on the House floor today talking about how slaves were counted in the late 1700s. But before he went into his statement about what's historically known as the 3/5 compromise, he made a joke. This was Representative Ron Hanks, a Republican. Just before Hanks was called to the podium, he was mistakenly called up as Representative Mike Lynch, another Republican. And here's where his joke began.
Being called Mr. Lynch might be a good thing for what I'm about to say. No, just kidding. Going back to the founding and going back to the 3/5, I heard the comments and I appreciate them and I respect them. But the 3/5 compromise, of course, was an effort by non-slave states to try to reduce the amount of representation that the slave states had. It was not impugning anybody's humanity.
A joke involving the word name lynch before going into a statement about counting slaves is, of course, questionable. What did he mean there? Was he referring to lynching? Representative Hanks did not like my question, saying over email it is abhorrent and asinine and it deserves no response, but because I'm sure you are objective in your reporting and a professional, I'll answer it as a courtesy. The answer is no. Listen to the audio. Well, what do you think? Representative Hanks has been mentioned on Next before for being near the Capitol building during the attempted insurrection, and then suggested in a fundraising email Antifa was behind that Capitol storming. That is, of course, not true. As the weather outside reminds us, ski and snowboard season is not over. While some of you are debating whether or not to make it up to the hill for a few runs tomorrow, there is a debate going on right now at the Capitol about what happens when you're on the slopes. Should ski resorts be responsible to publicly release data about injuries and deaths? Politics guy Marshall Zellinger is following the hearing going on right now at the Capitol. Marshall, this is no information no state requires from ski resorts right now.
Colorado would be the first, Jeremy, which may be why this is more contentious than it looks at face value. Before the hearing started, I even asked the public affairs director of Colorado Ski Country to help me understand the opposition from ski resorts, and he told me the testimony will address their concerns, and then he didn't have anything for me. Well, here's what I can tell you so far, at least. Data collected by the state health department revealed 10,000 ER visits last ski season. That's between November and April. That number is based on ER visits that mention ski or snowboard. That averaged to about 56 ER visits a day. The legislation that just finished being debated would require ski resorts to provide transparency that's not required currently. A safety plan that explains how the ski resort prevents accidents and reduces the frequency of them. The ski resorts would have to publish a report on deaths and injuries from the previous season and an accident database that includes wide-ranging detail, the age and gender of the injured person, where it happened on the mountain or ski lift, a summary of what happened, even what brand of gear the person was using.
This is not adding additional regulations to the ski resort industry and in no way outlines specific requirements about what they include in their safety plans, but rather it simply asks them to be transparent with data on seasonal ski accident statistics and their safety plans meant to mitigate those accidents and injuries.
What other businesses or activities anywhere are tasked with collecting this level of detailed information on their customers and their guests? Yes, skiing has inherent risks. We all know that. But so do many other activities we and our families all engage in. Do we require this type of information from community swimming pools, youth hockey or soccer programs, guns? We don't.
And now, continued, Colorado ski resorts will not have to. That debate just ended and the bill died in the committee. Just one of the members of the committee out of 5 voted in favor of it, and she just happened to be one of the sponsors of the bill. So, Jeremy, moving forward, nothing to see here. We just wanted to show you this idea that was being put out there for transparency, where apparently transparency is not needed.
Very interesting, Marshall. Thank you very much. He told stories through his photographs.
He had a very magical way of capturing a special moment like no one else.
And with his passing, now we learn his story. And your generosity continues.
It's moments like these that make you realize, and I think what we've realized is that we love our community.
With the Boulder community hurt, Next viewers broke records at one community nonprofit. And if you're not a fan of today's snow, you might be after we travel back to 1935 on a day in Colorado that came to be known as Black Sunday. When tragedy struck, Colorado came through in a big way. After the Boulder King Supers shooting, we focused our Word of Thanks campaign on the Boulder County Crisis Fund. Donations were collected to support the short-term and long-term needs of the 10 victims' families as well as the community. We learned today that 9 News and Next Viewers alone raised $296,000. The CEO of the Community Foundation Boulder County, which set up the fund, had a message for the 6,521 viewers who donated.
Just a profound thank you. It means the world to us. It's a difficult time in Boulder County right now, but knowing that we have friends all over the state and here in the viewership with Kyle, it just means the world to us. Thank you.
That's pretty cool. Hernandez says they will soon announce an advisory board that will decide where the money will go. They expect the first funds to be sent out next month. Now, this week's Word of Thanks campaign is for the Sava Center in northern Colorado. They offer help to sexual assault survivors. You can text us and we'll send you the link to donate.
A powerful spring storm is making its way across Colorado tonight. We've got much colder air in play and some heavy wet snow in the forecast. Denver is under a winter weather advisory and will be a little warmer and drier heading into the weekend. That snow will continue at rates of an inch an hour for some of you overnight tonight after a day with temperatures 20 degrees colder than average. And we'll watch the center of circulation make its way toward Kansas overnight. The snow will ramp up. It's going to be wet, heavy snow that's going to continue overnight and then off and on for tomorrow, even into the first part of Saturday. Winter weather and travel advisories remain in effect for Denver, the eastern plains, and the higher terrain areas for 3 to 6 inches of snow. Mountain areas could see 6 to 12 inches of snow, especially the further north you go, Fort Collins up to Cheyenne. So 3 to 6 in Denver, 2 to 4 Kiowa, 6 to 12 for Bailey, Winter Park with 4 to 8, and Estes Park 7 to 8 inches of snow. Winter weather advisory, heavy wet snow tonight, low 25, 3 to 6 inches tomorrow, quickly melting, condensing, but a slick and slow morning drive. Your Friday will be chilly with highs in the upper 30s and lower 40s. We see some clearing Saturday night, temperatures in the teens and early 20s. Sunday's the dry and mild day of the week, and then we get into Monday with another round of rain and snow.
Yep, well, it's April in Colorado. While we deal with cold and snow today, during the same week in 1935, people here in Colorado had it much worse. For tonight's Throwback Thursday, we're talking about the big dust storm that slammed Colorado 85 years ago. Strong winds swept across several states, blowing tons of dust into the air. The storm really took aim in Baca County, where the dust got so bad there were blackout conditions. This big storm on the week of April 14th became known as Black Sunday and went down in history as one of the biggest storms during the Dust Bowl time period between 1934 and 1941.
He had elevated himself to the highest levels of concert photography.
You didn't see him at your favorite concerts, but his lens saw you. Tonight, we remember the well-known photographer at Colorado's most popular music venues. And this isn't your ordinary fisher woman. This one wears a crown. The most Colorado thing we saw today. Thanks to his work, many people in Colorado are able to remember some of the best moments of their lives. And now we remember that man's life. Soren McCarty, a well-known photographer who worked concerts at Red Rocks in the Ogden, passed away this week after a battle with colon cancer. We talked with some of the people who knew him best to get a snapshot of his life.
He shot film and photo in Denver and at Red Rocks for 25 plus years.
He captured the moments and he knew what he was doing.
Soren has touched the lives of so many people, and I'm just happy to have been a part on his path. Well, I'm Jackie Brown, and I first knew of Soren through working in the music industry. We knew of each other 20 years ago.
He was the one guy more than any I've ever worked with who just made everything easy. My name is Don Strasberg. I am the co-president of AEG Presents Rocky Mountains.
He was the photographer with AEG for a reason. He had an eye like no other. It wasn't just because he was, the people person who could talk to everyone. He had a very special talent with capturing a moment like no one else.
He had elevated himself to the highest levels of concert photography.
Yeah, I absolutely thought we were going to be together for the rest of our life. It was quite a shocker to realize we weren't going to be. So I drove around up here for a while the other day and just cried, with the presence of Soren. I'm not sure how it'll be to go to a show here now without him, but of course he is very much a piece of Red Rocks, so he will always be here.
While we all are temporal here, those moments now last for a long, long time, hopefully forever. And that's a damn cool legacy.
That is Soren's legacy.
A damn cool legacy. How about that? That story told through our photojournalist Corky Scholl. Jackie is currently putting together a book of Soren's best photography over the last 25 years. The proceeds from sales will go to the Friends of Red Rocks charity. Mrs. Colorado is supposed to represent our state. Once you see how she's doing that, I think you'll agree she's doing a pretty good job. That and your feedback are next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is proof that you can take the woman out of the Wild West, but you can't take the Wild West out of the woman. This is Mrs. Colorado fly fishing, or Miss Colorado fly fishing in Deckers. Christian Garza is knee-deep in the river, crown and all, proudly wearing her sash over her overalls. Garza is the current Miss Colorado for the United International Pageant. Thanks to her friend Karen for sending this in to us. Show us the most Colorado thing you saw today by emailing us or reaching out on social media, of course, with the Hey Next hashtag. Let's go to some viewer feedback, which is always interesting when I fill in for Kyle. Roger in Denver, we have a new viewer. Roger in Denver says, so boring news. Just moved from Austin, and this news hour is horrible. Maybe go back to Texas?